Alarm bells are starting to ring over falling birth rates. In China and India, populations could halve by the end of the century. Some say that means a more sustainable future.
전 굳이 한국 출산율, 한국 인구수에 대해서 그렇게 집착할 필요가 있나 싶거든요. 어차피 지구가 지금 힘들어하고 있는데.
But others argue our societies and way of life will suffer.
Well, we're very concerned about overpopulation, and rightfully so, but the fact is that the new prognosis suggests that instead of being concerned about overpopulation, we might need to start being concerned about underpopulation.
Time is of the essence because every year that we wait, the proportion of women of childbearing ages is going to be lower.
With fertility a growing problem, meet the baby makers, helping bring new children into the world.
We are headed to KK Hospital right now for, I can't even remember how many visits already, but this is day 8, actually, of the injections.
All the great songs in one place. Charmaine E hanging out with you. Hoping you're
DJ Charmaine Yi recently turned 35. Just as she was planning to get her eggs frozen in Malaysia, news broke in Singapore of a change in the law.
Women are in favour of the White Paper's proposal to legalise elective egg freezing for non-medical reasons. While it gives them more options as aspirations change, it's also important that they know what's at stake.
After years of debate, women aged between 21 and 35, regardless of their marital status, will be allowed to freeze their eggs for non-medical reasons to preserve their fertility. It's known as social egg freezing. However, only married couples can use their frozen eggs to try for a baby through in vitro fertilization. The law would only come into effect in 2023. But another law already in place allows egg freezing on medical grounds.
Basically, I discovered a 10 cm cyst. So I went for an emergency operation and removed not just the cyst, but the entire ovary as well. So I was 25 at the time. I thought, oh, I'm still young, everything's okay. I guess I will meet the right person and have kids at some point. But a few years later, I discovered another cyst in my other remaining ovary. But when this news broke, my gynecologist told me, hold on, don't go to KL. I think you can appeal because I have a very strong medical case because I only have one ovary left. So, you know, I wish this was a conversation that we had like maybe 5 to 10 years ago, you know.
The law change is happening against the backdrop of worries over fertility and population. Singapore's birth rate is one of the lowest in the world, at 1.1 children per woman. That's well below the replacement rate of 2.1.
The Singapore Family Planning and Population Board was formed on the 7th of January 1966.
After fears of a population explosion in the 1970s, the country now confronts a shrinking local population.
Couples expecting a baby will get a one-off $3,000 grant to defray the cost of having a child.
I think we need to have enough of the next generation of our own. If we can push the fertility rate not to 2.1, which would be replacing ourselves, but to maybe 1.3, 1.4, we produce 2/3 of what we need, then the balance 1/3, well, I'm prepared to top up from overseas.
In Singapore, there is a great incentive to put your career and your education first. And marriage, dating, and childbearing can come later. The problem is that this process sometimes takes a long time or never finishes completely. The decision to lift the ban on social egg freezing in Singapore does make sense in the context of population dynamics and population structure in Singapore, because more and more women are giving birth in their 30s.
Some experts feel that there should not be an age limit for social egg freezing.
The important consideration is that a lady is not going to get younger, right? If they want to use their own eggs for future fertility, after counseling them about the chances, they should be free to do so.
Charmaine is just starting out on her journey to freeze her eggs. She's documenting her progress to share with women everywhere.
Right, so on the way to KKH, we'll see how this goes. I'm looking forward to this cycle ending because, I mean, injecting yourself is no fun, drawing blood, scans, it's never a fun process, I must admit. So I'm happy to hear that this cycle may end at the end of this week. And if so, then we really are going to be looking at the quality of the eggs next. So it's like, that's just clearing one hurdle, you know. Thank you.
At the start of the menstrual cycle, medication is injected to stimulate the ovarian follicles. That's to ensure the growth of as many eggs as possible. The procedure continues for the next 9 to 11 days. The patient can get the injections done at the hospital or do them at home. Charmaine's partner Camillo is helping with the procedure.
The doctor has given me what's supposed to be my last injection. This is the trigger shot.
Ready?
Once the eggs reach a certain size, they'll be triggered to mature with a hormone injection.
And then now we just wait.
36 hours later, it's time to harvest the eggs.
Today is the day of the egg retrieval process. I'm just quickly checking everything that was required by the hospital, where I need to go. So these are my forms. And I believe I'm all set and ready to go. Okay, today's finally the day. It's egg retrieval day. I've got my fingers crossed. Let's do this.
The lady would be under mild sedation and a small needle would be inserted into the ovary, guided by ultrasound to get the eggs out. So the eggs, after being retrieved from the body, will be checked by the embryologist.
The next step is in the clinic's lab.
Only mature eggs can be frozen. So we use a technique called vitrification. It's a rapid freezing technique where ice formation within the egg is avoided. So the survival rate should be better. The eggs are stored in big storage tanks. These tanks are filled with liquid nitrogen. So the temperature is maintained at -196 degrees Celsius.
Okay, so the procedure is done and I'm so happy I did it, quite frankly. These are the 16 eggs that were retrieved. Actually, of the 16, you can't really see, right? Some are larger than others. But of the 16 that were retrieved, 2 were not usable and 3 were immature.
The egg is supposed to look very smooth under the microscope, but sometimes they may contain vacuoles, sand grain-like structures. Sometimes there can be abnormalities with these eggs. So we look for only those which are mature. Immature eggs cannot be frozen.
The frozen eggs can be stored indefinitely. And the cost in Singapore for the entire procedure is about $10,000. So if more women go down this path, what impact will it have?
Whether social egg freezing will increase the birth rate, we do not know, and we can only guess. The fact is that the take-up rate where the ladies use the frozen eggs would be probably about 10%.
Declining birth rates are a global issue. 23 countries, including China, will see their populations halve by the year 2100. Some experts worry there won't be enough workers and taxpayers to keep economies going. There is still no shortage of people in the world. Births in all African countries are at replacement rate or higher. But mass migration is unlikely for political and social reasons. Popular countries like Singapore can usually attract migrants, but that comes with its own challenges.
If we rely too much on migration, Singapore will become a less rooted society. That's because many migrants have family members that are elsewhere in the world, and they may have incentives to move somewhere else or feel that it's easier for them to move somewhere else.
Some say it's now or never to get Singapore's birth rate up.
Time is of the essence because every year that we wait, the proportion of women of childbearing ages is going to be lower.
But Singapore's challenges are not as severe as the country with the world's lowest fertility rate, South Korea. It's taking increasingly desperate measures to turn things around. South Korea. Known for its K-pop, K-dramas, and now the Sampo generation. Sam means 3, and Po means given up. The Sampo generation are South Koreans in their 20s and 30s who have given up on 3 things: dating, marriage, and having children.
제가 산포가 된 이유는 저의 꿈을 위해서 여러 가지를 포기하다 보니 연애도 포기하게 되고, 그 이유가 가장 큰 게 이제 경제적인 돈도 들어가고 누굴 만나서 시간을 보내야 되는데, 그 시간에 이제 제 연기를 조금 더 고민하는 시간과 그 이외에 어떤 노래를 배운다든지 춤을 배운다든지 이런 걸 하는 게 저한테 더 이득이 될 것 같다는 생각이 들어서 포기를 하게 되는 것 같습니다.
(36-year-old) Kim Ja-song came to Seoul with the hopes of becoming an actor.
현재 공연 일정이 잡힌 건 없지만 이제 10월 달에 공연을 할 수도 있을 것 같습니다. 아무튼 앞으로도 계속 또 도전을 해서 좋은 배우가 되려고 합니다.
Ja-song believes there's nothing wrong with the Sampo generation.
산포에 관해 사람들이 이제 편견을 가지고 있는 거는, 만약에 뭔가 결혼을 안 한다 그러면 뭔가 문제가 있는 사람이 아닌가, 아니면 정서적인 거나 생각적인 게 많이 독특하거나 달라서 굉장히 개인주의가 심해서 결혼을 못 한다고 생각을 하기도 하는 것 같습니다. 제 생각은 어쨌든 제 인생은 한 번이고 제가 살아가는 거기 때문에 다른 사람의 눈치나 그런 시선 따위는 저는 중요하지 않다고 생각합니다.
So, who's to blame for the fading interest in marriage and children?
이러한 한국에 있어서의 산포 세대 증가 역시 한국 내 과도한 경쟁과 그 이유와 맞닿아 있습니다. 이 치열한 경쟁 속에서 청년들은 나의 부족함을 인식을 하고 나의 부족함을 메꾸기 위해서 아주 치열하게 고민을 한 끝에 이렇듯 3가지를 포기하겠다는 결론에 도달한 것이죠. 따라서 이 3가지를 스스로 자발적으로 포기한 청년들을 비난하기 앞서서 제가 생각하기에는 우리 사회를 이렇게 구조화시킨 기성세대와 국가의 잘못이 크다고 생각합니다.
South Korea's fertility rate has hit an all-time low at 0.8 children per woman. This is the lowest in the world. The country is aging rapidly, threatening the pension system and one of Asia's most dynamic economies. So the government is spending billions to encourage more births.
난임 부부에게 치료비를 지원한다든지 아니면 다둥이 가정에게 아파트 특별 분양을 공급한다든지 아니면 신혼부부들의 재정 자립을 돕고자 저리의 대출 정책을 시행해 왔습니다. 혹은 육아수당 또는 출산 축하금을 지급하는 각종 수당을 주기도 했죠.
But despite all the money being spent, so far it's not working.
그도 그럴 것이 어느 누가 아파트를 공급받고자 혹은 수당을 조금 더 받고자 아이를 출산할 수는 없는 노릇 아니겠습니까? 따라서 한국의 출산율 문제를 근본적으로 해결할 수 있는 이슈에 집중을 해야 되는데 미국의 최고 경영자인 일론 머스크는 급격한 획기적인 변화가 없다면 인구 감소로 인해서 일본은 사라져버릴 것이다 라고 얘기한 바 있습니다. 그렇지만 제가 우려하는 바는 일본이 사라지기 전에 한국이 먼저 사라지지 않을까 싶습니다.
(39-year-old) Kim Yina is known as a bihon. That's the name for women who choose to remain unmarried.
비혼자가 된 이유까지는 없고요. 어떻게 살다 보니까 이렇게 된 것 같아요. 살다 보니까 이렇게 된 것 같고 딱히 비혼주의자를 주창하는 것도 아닌데 아마는 아니고 어쩌면 제가 하고 있는 일 때문인가 싶기도 하고 연극을 하고 있으니까 돈도 잘 못 벌고 결혼이라는 거를 사실 젊을 때는 별로 안 하고 싶어 했어요. 왜냐하면 결혼한다는 게 굉장히 어떤 구속되거나 압박받는 것처럼 느꼈거든요. 결혼을 한다고 해서 제가 어딘가에 더 이상 내가 아니라 누군가에게 종속되는 느낌이 없어지면은 결혼에 대한 거부감? 불안함이 좀 덜해지지 않을까 싶어요. 그러니까 특히 한국은 이게 가족 간에 합쳐지는 거로 해서 그것 때문에 너무 괴담을 많이 들어서 시월드에 대한 그런 게 조금 덜하면 좋을 것 같고.
A local university is trying to influence the Bihons and Sampos.
그래서 여러분들이 투표하지 않으면 여러분들의 목소리 반영이 안 될 거예요.
Students go on mandatory dates for a gender and culture studies module.
이 수업이 학생들에게 이제 좋은 관계를 맺어가는 거, 그리고 또 결혼하는 거, 출산하는 거에 좀 더 긍정적인 그 어떤 격려가 된다라고 생각을 하고요. 그리고 왜 젊을 때는 20대 때는 모든 게 다 불안하잖아요. 불안하고 또 사회가 불안할 때는 더 불안해지기 때문에 그런 막연한 불안감에 대해서 좀 해소해주고 그리고 왜 그것을 좀 타개하는 여러 가지 좋은 팁들을 같이 공유해보는, 생각해보는 그런 기회를 준다고 생각해요.
This dating assignment prepares students for what to expect and how to behave on a real date. Each date lasts 4 hours, and they can only spend $4. For both Hyun-jin and Sang-yeon, this is the first date they've ever been on. It's the same for most students in their course.
제가 만약에 이 수업을 듣지 않았다면 저는 아마 데이트를 하지 않았을 것 같아요. 왜냐하면 지금까지 지금까지 많은 남자 간의 관계가 없었고 그리고 굳이 해야 될까라는 생각이 많았었는데 이렇게 수업을 통해서 좋은 기회를 얻게 되고 해보니까 제가 원래 생각했던 것보다 그렇게 두려워할 문제가 아니고 간단한 생각이구나 이렇게 생각이 많이 바뀌게 되었어요.
같이 4시간 동안 함께 있으면서 어떻게 해야 상대가 불편하지 않고 어떻게 해야 또 자신과 상대방이 함께 즐거울 수 있는가, 이거를 스스로 생각해보는 그런 기회를 마련해 보셨다고 생각이 듭니다. 결과도 재밌었잖아요.
맞아.
라면도 맛있었어.
맞아. 진짜 다행이었어. 거기 없었어.
또 왜 더치페이 같이 왜 한쪽에 몰아서 모든 희생을 하게 하지 않는 것, 내 이상형만 만나려고 하잖아요. 보통의 경우는. 그런데 이상형이 아닌 사람과도 왜 이상형이 아닌 사람에게서도 굉장히 좋은 미덕을 발견할 수 있고 그 사람과 내가 잘 맞을 수도 있다라는 걸 알려주고 싶었고요. 이거는 매칭 프로그램이 아니에요. 이거는 그냥 관계에서 어떤 매너를 가져야 하고 어떻게 운용하면 이 시간을 즐겁게 보낼 수 있는지, 그리고 그 많은 사람을 좀 만나보라는 그런 어떤 전제를 가지고 하는 수업이에요.
It seems more urgent than ever to get Korean singles to go on dates. In 2021, the number of marriages in South Korea hit an all-time low. While the country overall is not seeing an increase in births, one city is making headway. Sejong boasts a birth rate of 1.6 children per woman, twice that of Seoul.
사람 중심의 도시로 계획된 도시로서 깨끗한 주거 환경, 그다음에 맑은 자연 환경, 그리고 복합 커뮤니티 센터, 그다음에 종합복지센터 등 편리한 인프라가 잘 갖춰져 있습니다. 부모들이 거주 지역 인근에서 쉽게 공동유아 나음터를 방문해서 좋은 환경 속에서 공동 돌봄을 실현할 수 있고.
Co-parenting is a common sight in Sejong City. It's called Pumasi, which means the communal sharing of labor, or in this case, looking after each other's children.
가족 품앗이는 특장점으로 모임 주제와 활동 주제를 가지고 긴밀하게 활동을 하고 있는데요. 몇 가정이 이렇게 재미있게 활동을 하고 있습니다. 이곳을 이용하시는 이용자분들은 보호자와 자녀가 편리하게 누구나 오셔서 아이들과 함께 놀이를 할 수 있고요. 장난감을 대여해서 가정에서 활용하실 수도 있으세요. 또한 저희의 이제 프로그램 참여를 하시면서 가족 간 유대감 형성에도 많은 도움을 받고 있다고 하십니다.
Kim Mira moved to Sejong in 2019. She thinks communal parenting makes it easier for younger parents to have kids.
현대사회가 되면서 엄마 아빠들이 많이 바쁘고 조부모랑 같이 살 기회가 없으면서 아이를 돌보기에 좀 힘에 부치는 부분도 있고 삶의 지혜를 얻는 부분도 적거든요. 그런데 마을 공동체나 공동육아를 통해서 서로 지혜도 나누고 어려울 때 아이를 좀 서로 맡기기도 한다든지 같이 공부를 한다든지 이렇게 함께 할 수 있어서 지지도 되고 배우기도 하고 그런 면에서 좋은 것 같습니다.
From the lowest birth rate in the world to the highest in the developed world, Israel is defying trends elsewhere. What's behind its success? In Israel's largest city, the beach is a big attraction. And it's not just fitness enthusiasts. It soon becomes clear that there are lots of youngsters. Israel's fertility rate is 2.9 children per woman. That's the highest in the OECD. A veteran obstetrician is doing the morning rounds at a busy hospital. Up to 20 babies will arrive today.
Babies are born here all the time, all day and all night. We have around, I'd say, 600 deliveries per month and something like 7,000, 8,000 per year.
It's a contrast to places like South Korea, where some maternity wards have shut down.
We get to be a part of this stressful but very, very happy, intense, and emotional moment, which usually ends up with a happy family. So that's why I chose this profession.
The team discusses the day's cases to see which ones need the most attention.
Well, in the delivery room, what we do is we monitor deliveries all the time because the delivery room is like an intensive care unit. Things are happening very rapidly, very hectically, and then you can go from 0 to 100 in a second because the delivery can go smoothly, the fetus feels okay, the mother feels okay, and then in 1 second something happens which makes you have to react very quickly in order to fix things. So this profession of obstetrics, it's a happy profession, but you have to be very on top of things all the time and be able to monitor multiple things happening at the same time.
The process goes on all day, with a story in every room. Orel has just given birth to her second child, a girl.
I've been through thousands and thousands of deliveries, and what makes me happiest is the fact that I can make a difference. I can really make a difference. With a few simple interventions that we are all very trained in, we can make a real difference between life and death. And I think that's very satisfying.
Some of the new arrivals need extra care. A baby boy born 6 hours ago is getting a checkup. He arrived prematurely, at less than 2 kilograms, and just 10 months after his sibling.
We fight for every mother and every baby, to the extent that even fetuses that are diagnosed with very severe malformations are treated in utero and postpartum, so every child matters.
In the same hospital, a fetal specialist is checking on a pregnant patient. There's easy access to prenatal treatment, and it's thought Israel has the highest rate of ultrasound tests in the world.
ועשיתי בדיקת אולטרסאונד.
ובשאיפה אחרי זה נוכל לשחרר אותך הביתה. We have a lot of women hospitalized before giving birth and also during and after delivery. But for those in my department who are prior to giving birth, we are very concerned about maternal and fetal complications.
היו לי כאבים בבטן התחתונה.
וקיבלת כמובן תרופות לעצירת הצירים, נכון? I think the most devastating complication someone can have is a stillbirth in her first pregnancy. All the dreams shattering in a minute where we find a baby without a pulse, and going with families who had this complication to the next pregnancy, and then the next pregnancy, and then the next pregnancy, with very stressful memory of what happened in the past, and making sure it doesn't happen again, and making sure we'll get to term safely again. That's very rewarding.
At Tel Aviv University, a sociologist is studying the complex factors that make Israel different from other developed countries when it comes to having children. A background of persecution, genocide, and war can't be ignored.
There's all those historical reasons contributes to the high fertility rate in Israel, because the Jewish people feels like he still needs to fill the gaps. You have to have children in Israel as a woman. It's not an option. When you're pregnant and you walk down the street, everyone reacts. People even can touch your belly. That's really outrageous sometimes, because that's your personal body, but your uterus is everyone's uterus, and that's really it's really a cultural thing. When you just got married, people will ask you, when will you have your first one? And after you had your first one, well, when you will have the second one. And after you have the second one, people will ask you, well, what about the third one?
Her research indicates no connection between economic factors and the decision to have children. The generous help given to pregnant women is not followed up with similar assistance for young children. But it's not a deterrent.
You need to pay for your child care facilities, and sometimes you pay as much as you earn. Women that don't earn higher salaries invest most of their salaries in taking care of their children while they are at work. However, we see that that still does not affect women in their decision when and whether to have children. In other countries, sometimes women feel that they want to have a successful career and they prefer that over having children, large families, or families at all. But in Israel, that's not the case. We have only 24 hours a day. That's a given. And women need to decide whether to spend those hours between work and taking care of their families and leisure. Women in Israel are struggling to get it all done, and that's interesting. Why doesn't it change? Personally, I struggle like everyone else. I think families in Israel struggle, but it brings us to this cultural thing that children in Israel are the most important thing.
But some argue that Israel could soon have too much of a good thing. A prominent economist says official projections show the population will double from the current 9.5 million to 20 million within 40 years.
In a decade, we are projected to be the most congested country in the OECD, and rising rapidly. We're just literally taking off and leaving the entire developed world. We already have some of the most congested classrooms in the developed world. That is not going to fall anytime soon because you need to build more schools at that pace.
An added factor is that Israel has a range of different fertility rates. Muslims, Christian Arabs, secular Jews, and religious Jews have stable or falling birth rates. But one group stands apart: ultra-Orthodox Jews, or Haredi. They're on track to be the majority within decades.
Their fertility rates rose from 6 children per family, which is already very high in 1980, to 6.6 children today. This is something that's just disconnected from the rest of Israeli society.
He's part of a research group trying to get politicians and the Israeli public to address this sensitive topic. This includes discussion of whether some of the Haredi are getting a good enough education for jobs in a modern economy.
You can't make adults children and give them a good education. There's no reset button on human beings. Who's going to pay for maintaining their living standards, for taking care of their needs, be they medical needs or any other needs, and who will maintain the country? How will we survive here?
So while Israel debates its future amid looming demographic challenges, is there a place that has found a balance? Denmark has maintained a relatively stable population with social policies and an increasing role for technology. But will it be enough? It's the start of summer in Denmark's capital, and families are enjoying an outing. The fertility rate here per woman is 1.7 children. That's down slightly, but is currently supplemented by migration. Kindergarten children are playing and have reason to be happy. Their education is subsidized, and their parents will receive child benefits until they're 18. But something else is going on here. 1 in 10 kindergarten-aged children in Denmark is now the result of assisted reproductive technology, and treatment for the first child is free. Lisbeth and John now have 2 children, but it was a struggle to get here. When they met, she had fertility issues, but tests revealed John's low sperm count was what was preventing a pregnancy.
I took the blame for friends and for John by friends and family because it was the easiest thing to do. It was a big hit on his masculinity, and that's why it was the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
I didn't like to see him be sad, and I was okay, so why not do it?
Yeah, because when you are male, of course you can get kids. Every male can get kids. It's just the thing. It's a very big taboo, exactly also in Denmark, that a male, you can get kids. So to tell my friends, oh, my sperm is so low, I cannot get kids, I could not do that.
They tried 2 types of treatment. First, traditional in vitro fertilization, or IVF, where thousands of sperm are placed near an egg in a laboratory dish. And then another method, where a single sperm is injected into an egg. In both methods, the resulting embryo is placed in the uterus after a few days.
When we did the fertility treatment, I really had difficulty doing the needles because I don't like them. And I had to take so many. I had to mix the medicine in the bathrooms, anywhere where I'm going, in the theater, at social events, at family and friends. I was always the one looking like a junkie. And my stomach was very sore because I took so many through so many years.
And seeing your wife putting so many needles in her stomach and just lying there screaming in pain, it's so hard. And knowing you is the issue. It was so hard for me, but it was easy for me again, because the only thing I have to do is make a sperm sample and then hope the best.
After years with no success, they nearly gave up.
And the last egg was put up one day, and the next day I felt like a really strange feeling. I couldn't stand up, I couldn't sit down, and the day after I took a test and it was positive, and I'm like, no, it doesn't work like this. It doesn't work for us, so why should it work? We took a lot of private scans to make sure that it was real, and when we saw the first heartbeat and heard it, it was like, whoa, what are we doing? This is real.
Lisbeth was actually at her mom when she took the first test, and then she just called me and sent the picture. I remember I just lost my phone. I couldn't hold my phone in my hand, just crying in happiness. Because you've been through so much pain.
Baby Laura was born, and then came a twist. 2 months later, Lisbeth was pregnant again, this time naturally.
And we didn't believe it, our doctors didn't believe it, our friends and family were like, no, that's not real, is it a joke?
So Laura was born in January of 2020, and Magnus, our son, was born December 2020, just under 11 months after. Yeah, it was the idea when you couldn't get kids, and now you will get 2 in a year. It was so weird.
They're grateful that the fertility treatment was free.
If we had to pay, I would not be financially ready to do that because I didn't have the money. And I don't think we would be having kids today if we had to pay ourselves.
I think that is a wonderful thing because a lot of couples actually cannot get kids. And it is a problem on the global scale that you can't get kids. So that we in Denmark just can go see, okay, we cannot get kids, please help us.
I wish I had known when I started treatment that there's many people like us. Many people don't talk about it. Many people, it's like a taboo. And we are not alone. We are not alone. And that's really important that other people go through this as well.
I've talked to a lot of colleagues also, and then say, oh, actually, we also got the treatment, but for many years ago, but they never talked about it. Actually, a lot of people go through the treatment and they don't speak about it.
Thank you.
Denmark's new generation of children reflects underlying issues being faced worldwide. More than 1 in 5 men here will never become a father, and up to a quarter of all couples will experience infertility. In Denmark's second largest city, doctors at a popular fertility clinic are helping more than just locals. Before COVID-19, about 25% of the patients here came from overseas.
So when people travel to Denmark, it's due to our more liberal legislation towards egg and sperm donation. People also travel for, let's say, availability and experience. So in other countries where they don't have as high a volume of treatments, they of course have less experience, and especially maybe lab experience.
In Denmark, women also don't have to be married or heterosexual to access fertility treatment. And they can keep trying until they're 46 in private clinics.
So I think we have the best patients in the world because they are highly compliant. So we kind of feel we work on a common goal. So they desire a pregnancy, we want to help achieving the pregnancy.
Well, I have the best job ever. It's a very rewarding field to work in because you can help couples or women getting their child that they've been wanting for a long time. It's very fulfilling to help people to have their wish come true. Another thing is that with the lab technologies and what we, as doctors that we're interested in behind the scenes, it makes it very interesting for us to have a hard case and we can solve it.
The technology includes the Embryoscope, which is now used on every case.
Well, it's a machine where you cultivate the embryos and it takes a picture of each embryo every 10-15 seconds. So we actually have a film of each embryo, and using this system, we can actually select the most viable embryo and the best embryo with the highest pregnancy rates to transfer.
So there's progress in expanding fertility, but not everyone is convinced it's enough. At Denmark's largest hospital, fertility expert Søren Ziber is getting ready to give a presentation to government officials. He's trying to raise the alarm about falling fertility, warning that the safety valve of migration won't help for much longer.
Most people working in Danish farming is from Ukraine. They have a fertility rate of 1.2. Their population is drastically dropping, and in 70, 80 years from now, they'll be reduced by 67%. If you look at this chart here, it shows you that the chance of a live birth as you go.
His message is simple. The country needs to change attitudes and help local people start having babies younger.
It says, have you counted your eggs today?
He's known for provocative public campaigns, challenging women and men to find out more about their eggs and sperm.
All over the city, on side of the buses and so on. We all think that as soon as we stop using contraceptive pills or condoms or whatever, so we immediately become pregnant. That's not the way it is. I mean, we are, as species, not very fertile. So when we are most fertile, the women is in their early 20s. And from there on, it just goes downhill. We cannot treat us out of this problem. It's not only a problem due to health problems, to diseases. It's also a consequence of how we live and the hesitation to build a family. And if you, as a young person, think there's a huge conflict between obtaining the good life, the good job, your career, whatever you call it, and having children, you'll postpone having children until the need gets so strong that you need to have children. So therefore, we need to decide, everybody, all of us in Singapore and in Denmark and other places, we need to decide what type of society do we want to have.
We have one where the core is that we can have children and that we organize around having a family.
But attitudes are hard to change. So technology is where a lot of effort is being directed. The future of baby making will be different in ways that might surprise